The United States considered China under control. A new round of tariffs was supposed to put pressure on Beijing, forcing it to participate in negotiations. China, on the other hand, remained firm. It played a long game, one that had been in the works for years, not giving in. Indeed, they responded with their own tariffs, but this was only the beginning. Actually, the counterattack was underway behind the scenes. China strengthened its control over critical supply networks, ensuring the availability of rare resources required by the United States and its allies. It signed new trade agreements with countries looking to distance themselves from American influence. Every action aimed not only to respond, but also to reshape the global economy. Fast forward to February 2025, when hostilities reach a breaking point. The United States imposed tariffs on more than $60 billion in Chinese imports, ranging from computer parts to electric vehicle components, which are the fundamental building blocks of modern technology. It was part of a larger scheme, a continuation of Trump's efforts to bring manufacturing back to the United States. The lesson was very clear. Washington insisted that China follow revised trade policies. However, what happened next demonstrated that this struggle was about more than tariffs. It was about authority, power, and who controls the global economy. The U.S. declared that preserving American jobs came first. To China, however, it felt more like an attempt to challenge its authority on the international stage. Beijing did not rush or overreact. Rather, it moved cautiously, aiming precisely where it would cause the most damage. Within a few days, China imposed tariffs on $35 billion worth of American goods. However, this was about strategy rather than just numbers. They focused on farming, energy, and vehicles. The true genius, however, was in determining which goods were most important in major U.S. political areas. Midwestern soybeans are central to American agriculture. Texas oil, a major component of the energy sector, is sourced from China, influencing American companies to oppose their own government's policies, not only harming the economy. And that was only the beginning. Beijing was busy making backup plans while Washington focused on trade restrictions. It ensured that it could obtain the goods it required without relying on the United States, thereby strengthening ties with Brazil, Russia, and even Mexico. However, the actual power move was in something far more valuable: rare earth minerals, not soybeans or oil. These hidden jewels serve as the foundation for modern technology. Phones, electric cars, military systems, and other gadgets all require rare earths to function. What about China? It accounts for more than 80% of the global supply. China thus did not simply complain when the U.S. raised tariffs. It also proposed something far more disruptive: cutting off exports of these critical supplies. Just a simple message, no dramatic speeches or loud threats. You still need us if you want to create the future. However, China was not done yet. Not only were American farms being closely monitored, the energy sector finished second. LNG, or liquefied natural gas, U.S. oil, and liquefied natural gas were all subject to new taxes, taxing one of America's most important industries. China had long been one of America's largest energy consumers. That changed quickly, however, as tensions rose. U.S. energy companies suffered almost overnight. Contracts were canceled, shipments were seized, and profits plummeted. China was not sitting around either. It moved quickly, securing major energy deals with Russia, forming new Middle Eastern alliances, and increasing its own output. The intention is to reduce its reliance on American fuel, not only for the time being, but also in the future. Even if relations improve, these new deals will not vanish. The United States is thus not only losing money, it is losing significant market share in one of the world's largest energy markets. This struggle, however, extends beyond gas and oil. The true conflict is technology. The U.S. took a tough stance, denying China access to premium computer chips and excluding companies such as Huawei from American joint ventures. There was a straightforward concept here: slowness. China's technology industry is experiencing. Beijing, however, had a different idea. It doubled down on its own without relying on American technology. Billions of dollars have gone into developing native semiconductors, advancing artificial intelligence, and constructing 5G networks. The outcome is as follows. China's IT industry isn't just catching up, it is beginning to take center stage on a global scale. In some places, it is even gaining ground. China also played a quiet but potent card while the rest of the world was observing tariffs and trade restrictions. Debt from the United States. China has been one of the top holders of American government bonds for years, having invested nearly $800 billion. China would also suffer from selling everything at once. However, making minor changes could help. That tells another story. Following the tariffs, China's declining purchase of U.S. debt triggered a domino effect. Borrowing money became more expensive for the American government, affecting ordinary citizens. increasing credit card, car payment, and mortgage costs. It is quiet. It's not flashy. Still, it's a slow, consistent squeeze that yields real results, long relying on China to help fund its massive debt, the U.S. However, even a minor retreat by China triggers a chain reaction that no trade war can reverse. While Washington slapped tariffs on haphazardly, Beijing focused on something more important: establishing bonds. Instead of being at odds with the United States, China was shaking hands and signing trade agreements with Europe, Southeast Asia, and even long-standing American partners such as Latin America and Russia. The goal is to ensure that China has a variety of options. U.S. policies should never lead to a corner. This went beyond simple tariff avoidance. It concerned redistributing power in global trade. The consequences for American companies extend beyond simply losing access to Chinese consumers. They are now competing in markets where they previously held a significant advantage. China, on the other hand, is rapidly expanding and showing no signs of slowing. While the United States and China were preoccupied with breaking news, something else was going on closer to home. The United States imposed tariffs on two of its closest trading partners, Canada and Mexico, and they retaliate, just as China does. Canada imposed higher taxes on American agricultural goods. Mexico focused on steel, pork, and whiskey. However, this is where things get interesting. Neither nation simply responded. They turned around. Rather than relying so heavily on the United States, Canada and Mexico began expanding their trade with China. This presents challenges. America's influence in its own backyard begins to wane as these businesses shift more of their operations away from the United States. Still, the most significant change is not just in who trades with. It concerns global product movement. China became the preferred location for manufacturing decades ago. However, as trade tensions worsened, businesses began to seek alternatives. China was ready and knew what was coming. Rather than panicking, Beijing doubled down and invested in new supply chains in Vietnam, Indonesia, and parts of Africa. The plan was very clear: maintaining global production under Chinese control ensures that it is not subject to U.S. trade policies. This translates to two things for American businesses. Shipping costs are higher, and the adaptation process is much longer and more expensive. And this isn't just a temporary glitch. The global economic system is undergoing significant change. For American farmers, the trade war was more than just a headline. It was a financial horror show. China was a major buyer of soybeans, corn, and pork. However, as tensions rose, those orders disappeared almost overnight. Instead of relying on American farms, China turned to other sources, including Brazil, Argentina, and its own domestic production. Thus, U.S. farmers faced surplus goods, falling prices, and rising debt. The government intervened with bailout funds, but this was only a band-aid solution to a much larger problem. Even if trade relations improve, once China has established new suppliers, it may never return to American farms. This extended beyond business. It became political. Previously staunch supporters of U.S. leadership, farming communities began to feel pressured. With each lost sale, the call for a new approach grew louder. Farmers were not the only ones under pressure, however. When nations begin to tax one another, costs do not remain in boardrooms. They manifest themselves in daily life. Prices on everything from groceries to electronics began to rise. Companies that rely on imported goods had to pay more. They passed that cost on to their customers. Suddenly, a once reasonably priced smartphone was draining funds. Making a grocery store trip meant paying more for necessities. The cost of living began to rise, and most people had no idea it was due to trade policies being implemented some distance away. Meanwhile, global markets dislike uncertainty, which this trade war provided in abundance. Every new tariff proposal and failed negotiation jolted stock markets. One day, prices shot up dramatically. They then plunged. Investors were concerned as large corporations with global ties, tech behemoths, automakers, and retailers saw their stock prices fluctuate dramatically. However, this was more than a billionaire issue. Turbulence impacted regular workers' pension plans, retirement funds, and investment accounts. Trade negotiations were not just about determining economic policies. Millions of people's financial stability was being threatened. Though the rest of the world is caught in the crossfire, the United States and China are the ones delivering punches in this trade war. Every sector, from technology to agriculture, is under pressure. Nations that relied on seamless trade between these two behemoths are now struggling to adapt. Consider Southeast Asia, for example. Nations such as Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand rely heavily on American markets and Chinese production. However, companies are struggling to keep up with disrupted supply chains and rising costs. Once dependable customers are now causing delays, price changes, and an uncertain future for factories. Europe is also not immune. Businesses that export goods to the United States or import parts from China are facing new challenges. Every time a new tariff is announced, businesses are forced to change their plans, which typically results in higher prices, job losses, or even production relocation. Shock is being felt even in developing countries that supply raw materials such as agricultural products, metals, and oil. China's cut in imports due to economic uncertainty hurts those suppliers. Less exports means fewer jobs, lower income, and slower economic growth in already fragile countries. What are your thoughts on China's retort? Tell us what you believe in the comments section below.